Hello everyone, welcome to the latest Undercurrent News video interview. I'm Tom Seaman, the Editorial Director of Undercurrent. Today I'm talking with Morten Hildborg Jensen, the COO for Whitefish with Insula, a diversified seafood company focused on the Nordic region. Morten's been working in the Norwegian whitefish sector since 2002, firstly with Aker Seafoods, then Norway Seafoods, Leroy, and now Insula. Insula is a big player in processing whitefish, with the supply and demand dynamics on cod and haddock set to be the focus of our discussion today. There's a lot to cover on this topic, with cod and haddock prices set firm and the 2022 TACs in the Barents Sea down 20% and 23% respectively. Then, a major issue we're going to focus on today is the market impact of the loss of the MSC certification for the Norwegian inshore fleet, which makes up over 50% of the country's catch. So Morten, maybe you can introduce yourself and give the listeners a bit of an intro to Insula, as it's quite a complex and diversified company. So over to you.
Thank you, Tom. Good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Insula is a fairly new company in the seafood world, but we consist of many old companies. The company was founded in 2015 by my boss, Sigvald Rist, and it was developed further with ownership by Kverve. And Kverve is probably best known as the main shareholder of SalMar, the salmon farming company at Frøya, controlled by the Witzøe family. Since 2015, the company has made about 20 acquisitions within secondary processing and primary processing. We have about 20 factories. We have 20 factories in the Nordic countries. We are present in Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, and we have a small production site in Iceland producing canned cod liver. We produce I think we have around 1,000 SKUs. We are processing everything from pelagic fish to salmon and whitefish, of course, with the main species are cod, haddock, and saithe. Through Nordic Group, we also export a lot of fish out of the Nordic countries, and again, predominantly whitefish species. The secondary processing is main focus markets are the Nordic markets, but of course we also export to the European retail sector.
Okay, thanks a lot.
The annual turnover is around 6 billion Norwegian kroner, which is about 600 million,
roughly.
Around 600 million euro, and we are around 1,100 people employed in Insula.
Well, thanks. Sorry for butting in there.
Not at all.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's great to get that intro. That's really useful. And then, yeah, maybe we could kickstart by talking about this issue with the MSC loss for the inshore portion of the cod and haddock fishery. I want to focus our discussion on the kind of market outlook, but I was wondering if you could first, in layman's terms, give a summary of why the fishery has lost its MSC certification.
Yes, we have the Arctic cod species, which is also known as skrei, which is having its main habitat in the Barents Sea and the Norwegian Sea. We have a bilateral agreement or cooperation, fishing cooperation with Russia, which works excellent. We have a quota cooperation with the Russians of the cod stocks in the Barents Sea. And this stock has been MSC certified since 2010. We have, in addition, coastal cod, which is solely fish that is in the Norwegian sector. And there are multiple biotopes with coastal cod along the Norwegian coastline, which is very, very long. We defined the coastal cod as a species, as its own species or subspecies of cod, I think in 2005. Since the coast is so long, it is a challenge to do proper surveillance and to collect data that can be used for managing the stocks. And the data we have had so far has shown that the stocks in certain areas are under pressure, especially further south of 67 degrees, which is south of the Norwegian Sea. In 2010-11, when we were certifying the skrei, we had the issue with the coastal cod in areas, fishing areas like in Lofoten, are mingling with the skrei. And since the cod is the coastal cod is totally identical to the sky, you can't tell the difference. So a new system was introduced by MSC called IPI, which is identical, partially inseparable species. And we can maximum have a 2% bycatch of an endangered species that is an IPI, meaning that we had a problem with bycatch of the coastal cod in cooperation or in relations to the MSC certification. We then had a rebuild plan confirmed by ICES and thereby also by MSC in 2011, I think. And that was prolonged extended in 2016 and 2021. We were supposed to certify the coastal cod as sustainable, but still we don't have data that can prove that it is sustainable, or it has not been approved by ICES that it's sustainable. If we look at the latest catch figures, or the latest figures from the Marine Research Institute, the spawning biomass, the SSB, is improving. And it now appears that if you go north of 67 degree, which is the Norwegian Sea and the Barents Sea, we think that the coastal cod stock is in a good condition. And therefore we are asking the Fishermen's Organization, the client of MSC, to ask for certification of coastal cod north of 67 degree. Right. And so hopefully we will have that in place before the season next year.
Oh, that's good to hear. So by breaking the stock down into
two components, as we've done now, hopefully it's better, it's easier to manage.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, can you just clarify exactly how much of the fishery this applies to? Am I correct in saying it's about 50 to 60% in terms of the total? Is that...
Well, it's difficult to predict because normally, of course, the fishermen will catch the fish where it's easiest, where it's highest density. And now we have the main season in Lofoten, and there will be a lot of fresh fish landings there. About 70% of our fresh cod landings are landed between January and the end of April in the main season. So we think that it could affect up to 80% of all fresh landings, with about 60% of all cod fishing if you include the offshore fishing of frozen at sea.
Yeah, and I guess also you never quite know whether there'll be like transfers later in the year, do you, from uncorked volumes?
Exactly, like we have this year.
Yep. So yeah, it's hard to kind of assess.
And another thing is that we, of course, will try and urge our bigger vessels, our bigger suppliers. We don't own any vessels in the insula. We have very good cooperation with the inshore fleet, the smaller boats, as well as the ocean-going fleet, the purseaners, the 100-foot plus vessels, and they can easily go outside the 12-mile zone. However, as we all know, the fish is migrating, and sometimes the fish is inside the 12-mile zone. And there you have the bycatch issue. So if you're catching fresh cod and haddock inside the 12-mile zone, it is due to the bycatch, it is no longer MSC approved. So I guess that we predict that about 80% of fresh cod will be affected, 60% in total, and around 60% of the fresh haddock landings, which is around 25% of the haddocks landings, will be affected.
Okay, that's interesting to clarify that it's a lower percentage on the haddock side.
It's a low percentage on the haddock, as the figures I have in front of me. But we don't know, because this is an unprecedented situation. Yeah. We haven't been here before, so it's very difficult to predict how what the impact actually will be.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've said that we're sort of forgive the pun, sailing into uncharted waters. But can you maybe give a bit of a sense of what you think will be the price impact of the loss? Do you think it's likely that a price gap is going to emerge between MSC and non-MSC fish? And can you just give a sense of how that, you think that will play out in the market?
Yeah, it's a good question, Tom. And the market dictates the price. We don't. And I think it's very difficult. Again, it's an unprecedented situation we're in and going into. So we don't know exactly how the market will react. But if we look at, I will start maybe with 2021. We just got the export figures from Norway, and it's another record-breaking year. We had an export value of 120 billion Norwegian kroner, and we have never sold as much fresh cod and salmon as we did during the pandemic. So 2021 we had record in fresh exports, and you saw also there was a shift from salted product and dried products to more fresh. So we exported more fresh cod into for processing in the European markets. And I think what you've seen also, there's a shift from China towards Europe. Because of the transport implications and the increase in transport cost, more companies are seeking to process fish closer to the market, namely in Europe. And what we saw was the export of fresh cod went up by 30% last year, and salmon by 15%. We have a quota reduction on cod by 20% and 23% on haddock. We will transfer quota from 2021 to 2022. I don't have that exact figure yet, but I guess it's going to be close to 50,000 tons. So the quota reduction next year will not be 20%. Maybe it will be 5 to 10%. So there will be less fish, and the Russians have less fish, and we have also, it's more difficult to find the fish at the moment. We don't know exactly why. Whether it's change is migration, we don't know. But there will be less fish from Iceland, from Russia, from Norway, and we have a very strong market. And what we have seen during the pandemic is that when the restaurants have been closed, it has had an impact on home consumption. People who normally would not cook fish at home because they don't know how to do it, they learned how to cook fish. And we hope and we believe we actually recruited some home consumers of seafood during the pandemic. Hence, the overall demand on fresh will be stronger in 2022 than it was in 2020 and 2019. And therefore, I think that the price on cod will go up. So we will see a price increase on both non-MSC and MSC cod. So the question is, will there be a price gap? And I think only time will show that, whether there will be a price gap between MSC cod and non-MSC. On pelagic, on saltfish, we don't see a strong, let's say, requirement on MSC, as we see in certain retail products, especially in the European supermarkets. We see that on block that there is a stronger demand for MSC block compared to non-MSC block. And we also saw that on Alaska pollock, there was a price gap between MSC and non-MSC. So I do predict there will be a price gap. I hope not, of course.
But it's more of a question of just how much, you think.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a question of how wide.
But I think, yes, but I think in general, we've seen it already. This year started with very high prices on fresh cod. And we've seen also the prices on frozen cod has gone, I would say, almost through the roof. Yeah. Whether, I think these very high prices we are seeing right now are probably also driven by there's less fish coming to the market at the moment. I do believe that the prices will stabilize at a slightly lower level than we see today when the fishing picks up in a few weeks' time from now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You started to touch upon it there, but I was wondering whether we can go into a bit more detail about how the MSC certification matters in the market. I mean, obviously, it matters to some segments of the market less than others. Like the saltfish sector you mentioned there, but it matters a lot more to the retail sector and some elements of the food service sector. Can you kind of explain the sort of varying degrees to which different segments of the market will be hit by this MSC loss?
Well, I think that especially when you have pre-packed products, can be both fresh and frozen. When you have retail packed products, you will see a higher impact. A lot of the clip fish, the salted and dried products are sold whole. They're sold at fishmongers and they're sold also in retail shops where they're sold as whole sites. There, I don't think there's a strong demand for MSC. But if we're talking, for example, like breaded cod, there is a strong demand for MSC. And we hope, of course, that some of our good customers will buy non-MSC fish in 2022. knowing that we have a very strong regulation in Norway, knowing that the species are not endangered. We actually see an increase in the coastal cod biomass, and therefore we do believe that the fish stock is sustainable. So we hope that the market will actually, shows a little bit of patience with us, still be there as customers, because we will get the MSC back. And I don't know whether there's going to be a big gap between MSC and non-MSC. I think that what we saw in the fall this year, we lost the MSC in August, and so far we haven't seen any great impact on the fresh market. We have been able to sell all the fish that we landed in our regular markets, and that's not only whole fish, it's also our loins and other fillet products. So I do believe the market and the demand is very, very strong. But the biggest impact is where you have a facing in a supermarket, where you have a pre-packed product, and you use
the retailer has a specification,
and the retailer have a specification for it. That's where we have the greatest impact. But we have to, we are buying from a lot of small boats, and our societies are very fragile because there's only fishing. We can't turn our back to our smaller suppliers. We will still buy non-MSC fish.
Yeah.
We have to stay faithful
and find
to
markets
our
for
small fishermen. Yeah, we have to, because it will impact these societies in Finnmark and Northern Norway. There's nothing else to do. So we have also a responsibility as an industrial player in those societies.
Do you think, I mean, one thing you see in the UK, and I'm sure in continental Europe too, is that sometimes retailers use kind of tertiary brands to put, products into the market when it doesn't meet their specification, like, a retailer, like a processor brand that isn't really a brand.
It's like a carrier, just a carrier to get the product into shop. Yeah.
Do you think that that's likely, that could be a way which, the gap is bridged, with retail products maybe?
Well, I hope so. Honestly, I hope so, because I think it's important that we get the product to the market. The fish will be caught, and we should get it to the market. We should get it to the consumers. In some of our markets in the Nordic countries, the demand for MSC is not that strong, because if it says it's Norwegian origin, people do actually trust that we have a very strict fishery regulation in Norway, which we have, and we have a very rigid and strict system on controlling all our landings. That when you buy a Norwegian fish, it's not black fish; it's legally landed and caught and landed. And so fortunately, we have a lot of customers who actually trust our system and Norway fish that is both sustainable and safe to consume.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks, Morten. Obviously, the other big thing with the outlook is the TAC cuts, and as you said, the transfer of, I think it's 15%, isn't it, which is being transferred on cod of uncaught.
Yes. We're still waiting for the numbers from the Directorate of Fishery, but it can be up to 15%. And if the quota was 430,000 tons last year, it's more than 50,000 tons. And if I look at the statistics, week 51, there were still 56,000 tons fish left on the quota. So I guess that it will be close to 50,000 tons that will be transferred, which I think is good because it will create stability.
Yeah,
it's not good to have a 20% drop in a commodity like fish,
especially not when demand is very strong.
And exactly, it's not in anybody's interest. Is that we will have these big fluctuation on the price scene.
Well, yeah, and actually, I was going to check with you. I looked at that data too. The latest, it's week 51, isn't it? Is the latest catch data?
Yeah.
So I guess what they've said it's going to be 15%, but they haven't quantified that in
Exactly. I think we will get the numbers on January 26th. I think that's what they're saying. So
is that a meeting taking place? Or
I guess so. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. And yeah, do you think obviously prices have been steadily firm for all of last year, and then rising more at the end of the year. Do you think that that will carry on this year, or is there essentially a ceiling, that really, where the market won't take more and demand will drop off, then that will, stabilize or see prices decrease? Yeah, what's your kind of outlook on that?
I
Sounds
guess
like
I don't think we will see a price decrease. That would really surprise me if that would
yeah,
that would be the outcome. That would really surprise me. Of course, I don't wish very high price fluctuations. We as an industry, predictability is important for us. We often give like 6 months or even 12-month prices. So for us, predictability is very important. So what I wish for is stability. And I think that this 15% transfer can give us some more stability. It's quite normal that the prices in January starts at a high level because we have normally very bad weather. We have low landings, and then I guess also that people have been eating other proteins for Christmas, and whitefish appears to be very popular for campaigns during January, February, March, which is also, especially February, March, April, is the time of the year where the cod is at its prime, is the best quality. It's a good time to have to sell the fish fresh. So I will tell you more in about 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, I guess it's
because it's now we're just we're just there breaking water. It's just in the between the Christmas trade and the new season. We are just in between these two periods where we will. It's too early to predict, I would say.
I mean, so do you think that there's a risk that prices could get too high and there's some substitution in some segments of the market for cod in particular to other cheaper fish? Or are there less of those options out there now?
Yeah, that you will always have that risk. I of course, I hope that we will be able to retain the markets that we created during the pandemic, some of it. I guess that the salted and dried will probably take back some of their lost market share because there's been probably been sold a little bit too little fish last year because the markets in Spain, Portugal, Brazil went down due to the pandemic, but I think they're slowly coming back. And we're also seeing, for example, in Spain on stockfish that people are consuming more at home, those types of products. So yes, there will be a stronger demand between the people who are producing or selling fresh and making fresh fillets and the companies that are salting and drying. There will be a stronger demand there.
And I guess all
that
of those
could drive the prices up, definitely.
And those segments of the market you've mentioned are not sensitive to MSC loss, I would assume, right?
It doesn't. Not to the same extent as we see with, for example, blocks or IQF products for the retailers.
So I guess it sounds like to some extent your view is that the strong market will kind of. I mean, obviously, it's not good that that this portion of the fishery is losing the MSC certification. On the other hand, it sounds like the demand is kind of the stronger driver here in the market, really.
That's what we feel. That's definitely what we see so far, that we have been able to sell our products. There's not been any weeks last year where we couldn't sell our fresh cod or haddock.
Yeah.
Actually, we've seen very strong development on the haddock prices. And I think what really helped there was the opening of the fish and chips sector in the UK. We really felt that, and that was really nice to experience and see that the consumption of fish and chips is very strong in the UK market.
Yeah.
And I don't think they are as strict on MSC either.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, I think some shops do, but it's definitely not something which is.
And we see the same with the hotel and restaurant trade, that they are not so strict as the retailers. I think that so long they know the fish is Norwegian, it's good enough for them.
You touched upon it a bit earlier, but yeah, can you tell us a bit more about how Insula has seen cod and haddock demand over the course of the pandemic, and then how you see that evolving in 2022?
Yeah, we've experienced a strong demand both on cod and haddock, also on saithe, on coley. We see that the prices on coley block have gone up. I think that's driven by Alaska pollock. There's a very strong market for Alaska pollock, and your question was whether there's going to be like cannibalism or by other proteins. Well, I guess that there is a very strong demand for proteins. Period. There is a strong demand in general, and from time we have had problems covering the demand. Simple as that. Our factory in Bad Fjord, we have never processed and bought as much fish as we did in 2021 in that site, and we haven't had any problems selling the products. On the contrary. And we see that on the other sites, and also our trading, our export of fresh fish via Nordic Group. We've had a very good year in 2021, driven by strong demand. We feared that people would stop eating or would reduce their fish consumption when consuming at home. We saw when people were sitting home in lockdown, they would buy more breaded fish. But we have seen also now we sell more fish. We sell more loin, which is like the prime cut of the fish, and among our most expensive products. We have seen also our salmon retail product, our most expensive salmon product, which is also a back loin in a vacuum called Frøya. Very strong demand in 2021 for those type of products. So it appears that people, when they're not traveling or sitting on restaurants, they want to indulge themselves with high quality food. I don't know how, I'm not familiar with the wine industry, but maybe they have the same experience, that people are actually treating themselves.
Yeah, and I guess, I think, well, you'll be hoping, and I think it's logical to assume that some of it's going to stick.
That's what we hope. Yeah, time will show, of course, and as I said before, Tom, it's the market dictates dictate us. We can of course try and influence the market, but again, we have not been here before, and it's interesting to see how the pandemic will affect the consumer behavior in the years to come.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and in terms of to sort of expand on that, can you give us a sense of what Insula's plans in terms of market approach and strategy are for this year, and are there any kind of capital expenditure projects you could maybe discuss?
The latter question I can't. We are in a consolidation year, 2021. We upgraded 2 factories in Denmark, the Bad Fjordbruket and Tobefisk, with 3 Valka lines, and they are now fully installed and in operation and working very well. And we also installed more equipment for vacuum packing, IQF freezing, so we can actually expand our product range to not only be fillets, loins, and blocks. We can now also make vacuum products and IQF product for further processing inside the Insula product range and also outside the Insula product range. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to make more retail products and to follow the market. And we see that people are willing to pay a good price for a pre-packed fish. So we want to expand not only to be selling to the counter, but also to be selling pre-packed products. We bought vacuum lines so we can offer both fresh vacuum, but we can also offer refresh vacuum. And what we're seeing is that if you freeze the fish close to the source and you refresh it in the market, this is a system that we strongly believe in, because by that we can expand the distribution of fresh seafood, and we will not be as affected by the seasonality we have on whitefish in Norway, where I was saying earlier 75% of fresh cod is landed within 4 months, and that's a challenge for an industry like ours to adapt to.
So increasingly that product is being kind of processed, frozen, and then just sold to the market over a period of months, as opposed to just
they will be refreshed in the market, and that works pretty well.
Okay, great. Well, I don't know whether you've got that. You've covered everything I've wanted to ask there. So unless there's anything particularly pressing on your mind, we can call it a day there. And thanks very much for chatting to us. So
thank you very much, Tom. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for your time, Morten. Really great chatting with you. And
thank you.
Have a great day. Take care.
You too.